The Audi R8 GT RWD is an absolute masterpiece, but when you push it to the limit under extreme load, that mid-engine snap oversteer will completely ruin your lap times. In this S1 800 Purist tuning guide, I'm going to show you exactly how to dial out that high-speed instability and unlock its true potential, all while keeping that raw stock feel intact. Without wasting any time, let's jump straight into the tire setup. The R8 GT comes stock with semi-slicks, but the front tires are honestly way too narrow. To fix this, I bumped up the front width by 20mm and widened the already massive 305s on the rear by another 10mm. Stick around because I explain exactly why I decided against going even wider later in the video. For some extra stability, I also widened the track width a tiny bit both on front and rear axles. Moving over to the drivetrain section, I opted for a 6-speed race transmission. Honestly, 7 gears were just overkill for what I needed. Throwing in a race drive line for weight reduction and a race diff for full adjustability was a complete no-brainer. When it came to the platform and handling section, I went all in, minus the weight reduction. So we've got race coilovers, race anti-roll bars and a race roll cage to give us this essential extra chassis stability. To balance things out, I added a bit more horsepower and threw on a few specific engine parts just to shed that extra weight brought on by the roll cage. I actually considered going twin turbo, but come on, there are way too many turbocharged cars out there anyway, so I figured we should appreciate and enjoy one of the last great naturally aspirated V10 engines. Once all the parts were bolted on, the car sat right at nearly 700 horsepower and weighed just under 1600 kilograms. Now that the hardware upgrades are sorted, let's dive right into the custom fine-tuning, starting once again with the tire pressures. This is actually one of the few cars where I didn't just slap the 2.0 bar on both exits and call it a day. For this specific build, dropping the rear down to 1.9 bar, which is around 28.8 psi, turned out to be an absolute sweet spot. Up the front, you will want to set it up to around 29.4 psi. The gearing is fully optimized to give you a perfect launch without lighting up the tires, while ensuring you get an amazing run on corner exit. Plus, it keeps the power band sitting right in the perfect spot most of the time. Over in the alignment section, it's a pretty standard affair. Running more negative camber in the front than the rear is a classic setup, and I added a touch of toe out up the front for sharper turn-in response, along with some toe-in at the rear for that much-needed high-speed stability. Front caster was honestly a bit of a mixed bag. To be fair, this entire build is a massive balancing act. If you tweak one single parameter even a tiny bit, it can easily break the whole tune, meaning you'd have to readjust like 20 other sliders to compensate. The anti-roll bars on the other hand are dialed in quite unusually because they are incredibly soft. I definitely tried running stiffer ARBs at first, but I couldn't get anywhere near a stable setup that actually worked for me, so backing them off and softening them up was the real breakthrough for this build. Because of the soft ARBs, I had to encounter a too soft overall setup, so the springs are on the stiffer side to compensate, especially since the car still weighs nearly 1.6 tons. The ride height, of course, optimized for street and road racing, so you shouldn't run into any issues with the car bottoming out on track. And now we've arrived at that one section that gave me a massive headache. I easily tested around 100 different damping combinations before finally landing on this exact setup. The biggest hurdle here, which still hangs around just a tiny bit due to that mid-engine layout, is that notorious snap oversteer. This happens when the car suddenly and violently snaps loose at the rear during high-speed cornering or rapid rate transfers. It's a nightmare to fix because you're working at a microscopic limit where aero downforce, suspension stiffness, including your damping settings, and the tire grip have to be in perfect harmony. Tweak one wrong slider and the car's entire stability just collapses. Usually I tell you guys to adjust the sliders to your own personal preference, but for this specific car, just don't touch them. I also poured a ton time into the aero section testing out various configurations. Cranking up that front downforce actually made a snap oversteer significantly worse, so I kept the front aero at 133 kgf for this build. My strategy this time was to dial up the front aero first, and then gradually increase the rear downforce step by step to match it. Usually setting up aero is a quick job, but this car was an absolute rollercoaster. Braking is super straightforward. The default braking pressure works fine as it is, but feel free to turn it up if that's your personal preference. I didn't run into any issues with locking up during testing. The overall brake balance is set up that you can confidently throw the car right into the corners. The differential settings are also a bit on the conservative side. Running too much lockup made the rear incredibly unstable, so I went with much more defensive values than I usually do. And that wraps up the entire tuning process. While I leave you with some final thoughts, you can check out the gameplay of the R8 GT tearing up on both Hokubu and Legend Island time attack circuits. Let me look back and explain exactly why I skipped out on the maximum tire walls. I tested them initially, but I just couldn't get the wider compound into its optimal temperature window. It literally took me about 5 laps around Legend Island circuit just to get them stable at around 75 degrees Celsius, which honestly wasn't worth wasting those extra PI points. Instead, I reinvested those PI points into engine upgrades, giving us an extra 40 horsepower. That's also the exact reason why I didn't even bother stripping more weight with the sport or race rate reduction options. Dropping more weight actually makes the snap oversteer worse because you lose mechanical grip over that rear axle and the weight transfers happen way too fast. In my last tuning video featuring the BMW F87 M2, I talked about how much time went into making the car drivable. But thinking back on it, that was just taking a fundamentally good setup and making it better. With this R8 GT, the entire challenge was just making the car usable on the track without completely killing its natural character. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's video, and I really hope this guide helps you out. If it did, definitely drop a like and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or setup suggestions, let me know in the comments below. I'll catch you guys on the next one, and until then, keep the revs up high and the weight down low.